This must be my favorite setting type, post-apocalyptic world. So familiar yet so alien at the same time, a place where we discover answers to so many what-if questions. Good writers can turn this genre into study of the material world in extreme conditions, how the animate and inanimate matter would behave in such and such conditions. The best writers can turn it into the study of human psyche and take a glimpse into the very soul of our kind. I still remember the time when I was just a kid. I would watch those post-apo movies, and even when they scared me and kept me awake at night, I could not let them pass me by. I had to watch them. There was something magnetizing in watching human beings trying to survive no matter what. Sometime later, when I was in my young teenage years, I played Fallout 2. I played it in English since I had no access to the translation in my native language at the time. I was so grasped by the presented world and characters living in it that I took all what I have learned in school and grabbed the English-Polish dictionary to aid me in my efforts. And so I translated the game for myself. I learned the language and gained the memory of summer break that is more vivid than any other, and will stay with me till the end of my days, I think. Yes, I have a soft spot for this genre, but regardless, I will try my best to review the game in an honest manner, which won't be easy, mind you, since it is critically acclaimed piece in video games reality. Will my opinion of this title be any different from the majority of voices that talk about it so far, or will I become one of them? Let's find out together. The Last of Us Part 1 is a story-driven game in its core. All the other elements serve this one, fit it with what it needs to move forward. First segment of the game is situated 20 years in the past, so we can get to know Joel, one of the main characters, for a very short bit. We get to witness who he was and what he have lost. But it's very important that we know the difference between that guy and the Joel in the present day. And oh my goodness, with those Naughty Dog games, Joel goes from the loving father to the cold-hearted thug and murderer in less than an hour of playtime. Yes, I know, 20 years has passed. But I was not ready for this at all. Feels like a pattern for those developers. You are quote-unquote good guys that murder fellow humans in cold blood just to further your goals. I don't like that for now, but we will see how it evolves. Maybe there is a point to be made here after all. You play most of the time as Joel, so it is really hard to watch him do all the stuff that he does, both during gameplay and cutscenes alike. He seems to be single-minded, he just wants to gain as much as he can to secure his nearest future, not giving much thought to all the evil he does. Someone could say that so-called bad guys got what they deserve, and that is all fine, but I tend to disagree on such manner. Joel has no problem with killing guys that he doesn't know, or barely knows if we assume that they had some meaningful interactions in the past. We could explain all that by saying that they were a threat to him and his companion. We could even do that for Joel executing a defenseless guy in the cutscene, but why would we do that? I just say that for now Joel is a bad guy in this story, and we will need to wait and see how it unfolds. The future events holding redemption arc for him? Okay, so long story short, after the very dynamic beginning to the game, both 20 years before and in the present, Joel meets Ellie, so their journey begins. They will not be alone all of the time. In many parts of the game they have more travel companions. Some of them end up bad, as you expect in this very dangerous world they live in. Oh, I forgot to mention, to all of you who didn't know yet, and I wonder how it would be if you don't live under the rock, I knew most of the plot of this game years before I even installed it. Such is the wild beast called pop culture, but I digress. The whole story evolves around the plague that entered the world. some new kind of very potent fungus spreads and takes control over human beings, effectively turning them into fast and furious zombies. We got specimens in different stages of infection, but we're gonna talk about that in gameplay section if I will not forget. So back to the characters you meet along the way. Some of them are very conflicted, like a guy who keeps talking how caring about and helping others will only get you in trouble, while at the same time he helps our duo tremendously. It was great to see, cause we know people like that in real life, that bitch and whine all the time while being very useful and helpful at the same time. Overall, I am very impressed how well written are characters in this game. They have distinct personalities, they are believable and most of all very human in all kinds of ways. Even Joel and Ellie are thought through in every way. They are both hardasses but two very different ones. Joel is hardened survival veteran that cannot admit to his own weaknesses and faults, where Ellie is a snarky but likable teenager. They both get their own problems, but even if they fight a lot, they still can come together to overcome the obstacles on their way. Maybe that's exactly what grips players so strongly in this title, but we need to examine other aspects of the game before we come to the final conclusion. I want to talk about the ambience and mood in the game. This is a very bleak vision of a post-apo future where humans are hunting other humans, instead of cooperating in order to clean the world from the infestation and get back to good old progress. I mean, well, yeah, there is cooperation inside the camps of different groups. There are factions with multiple bases of operations, but even inside those structures fellow human can be wolf to you. This was shown by Joel and Tess very clearly at the start of the game, and later on we will have to overcome cannibals and maybe even worse. Sam and Henry, that was a strong part of the story. It really caught me off guard cause of very fast resolution after slowly building their story. Most of the time I do not like twists like this, but if they are told in a masterful way, they can work wonders to raise the stakes and tension for the reader, watcher, or listener. On the other hand, we got Tom, which is Joel's brother. Tom's wife and their crew with a very nice settlement, which on the first view makes you wanna stay. That's the hardest part of a hero's journey, when they're halfway there to their goal, which is always achieved through sacrifice and hardship, and often accompanied by pain, misery, and overall overwhelming suffering. Maybe that's why the safe haven along the way is the most daring challenge to face. It is very tempting to forego even the most noble goal, just to feel warmth of safety even if it's just for a moment, even if it's just an illusion, because deep down you know, there is no real safety in the world you live in. But let's get back on the track. Joel in one moment of the story tells Ellie something in anger that made me feel real sad, and even a little bit angry myself, and that does not happen often. After he cools down, Joel does the right thing and keeps his word, and that made me happy. And that happens even less often when I follow a video game story. Maybe I am getting older, more cynical and less emotional. Whatever the case may be, it is really the achievement of the artists involved. Writers, animators, graphics, actors, sound designers, the list goes on. To make such a cold-hearted son of a gun like me to feel something that's real inside all of us, no matter how deep it may be buried. Never mind Joel. David is the most creepy character I've seen in video games for a long time. He tramples over demons and monsters, maybe because he is shown so subtle and not explicit, but we can clearly tell what he is later on. And the fact that he is the most disgusting human amongst his cannibal brethren says a lot. Even surrounded by such dark characters, Joel doesn't seem to even starting on redeeming himself. He insists on staying the murdering son of a gun just like he started this whole journey. and I would not count protecting Ellie to be much of a redeeming quality, as he does this more for himself than anything else. Gare reminds him of what he lost, about the old life when he thought that he was someone else that he is now, but we saw him at the beginning of the game. We had a chance to observe his unwillingness to help other people in the time of need. He was always the man he is now. The only difference is the world he lives in and maybe the fact both he and Ellie grew fond of each other. They are getting softer in the sense that they start to feel the fear of losing each other. And it's conveyed on the screen in a very believable way, so no complaints here. What I can complain about again is Joel. I know, I should change the record already, but this is the last thing I have to say about that, I promise. What I mean is that the man at the end of the story presented in this title is not only mass murderer, but he also becomes liar. That's no such a big deal, I hear you argue, but it really is. The big lie that he tells the one which he loves the most is beyond my critique. You need to play the game and see the final cutscene for yourself. I talk so much about the characters in this game. The last one of them is the game world itself. It builds wonderful backgrounds and even foregrounds for the rest of characters to be presented in. It is detailed so much, handcrafted by some of the most skilled graphics and sound artists. We're gonna talk about it some more later, but I just wanted to mention it here, cause the environment with all of its impressive elements is one of the key elements that build the story of this game. Another key element in any game is gameplay, of course. Overall, it is very good in The Last of Us, but I was sure to note some flaws and funny things about how it all works. Don't get me wrong, when I will make fun of some mechanics, I had a great time most of the time. The game itself is a combination of stealth, action, shooting, and some story exposition during gameplay sprinkled on top. So the first funny thing is that Boost Me Up meta returns in another Naughty Dog title. I laughed every time I heard Boost Me Up or I will boost you up. Good thing it was not a drinking game, or else I most likely been not alive to say that. This is funny, if not frustrating sometimes, because of one more thing. Sometimes your way is blocked by some thin and short bushes or something stupid like that. In real world, you would just go with the easy way. But I guess it's the trope in video games since like ever. To make things slightly worse, Joel sprints like a 90-year-old man, and he's supposed to be in his early 50s. And why Joel can't run while crouched, when everyone else can? This is really odd, but hey, what do I know? It's not like I am video game enjoyer for several decades now. Hey, wait a minute. From other news, the game is hard even on moderate difficulty settings. Clickers got me more times than I can remember. Well, at least we can enjoy some very nicely done brutal death animations, both for playable characters and NPCs alike. So if you don't wanna watch them multiple times in a row, you need a more stealthy approach sometimes. And stealth is pretty good. Reminds me of Days Gone, but it is not free of faults and tropes from past games. Oftentimes AI simulation of senses like vision and hearing is pretty bad. Oh well. But keeping myself on my toes brought another added benefit, because exploring is very beneficial in this game. You're gonna find manuals in many places, and those things will get you some boost to your effectiveness in combat and outside of it alike. Very well designed. When you're sneaking around all over the place, there is one annoying thing that was resolved better in many games before. There is no option to disarm any traps. You need to avoid them or trigger them. That is disappointing. Okay, so the last thing that you're gonna find when you are snooping around are notes, journals, and even some recordings. That is much needed element in any post-apo setting, because it is very easy way to paint broader picture using specific short stories. Yes, it is a little cliché, but it works very well. Maybe audio recordings are somewhat annoying, because you can't move or do anything useful while listening to them. You are just stuck in place with an audio recorder in your hand. Okay, so let's think here. What else annoyed me during gameplay? Ah yes, the weapon changing from two-handed firearm to one-handed. When grabbing enemy makes sense, but why on earth it does not change back after you release foe from your grasp? Another thing, sometimes, well, to tell you the truth, it was maybe like 2 times during the whole playthrough, Joel would not react to my inputs. Quick reset of the game helped every time, so no big deal there. But still you would expect to see no bugs like this for the 3rd or 4th release of the game. But that's not that bad. What shocked me for real was the infinite ammo in the sniper section in one point of the game. Infinite ammo like in some sniping segment from Call of Duty. I expect more from the game that strives for much more realism. Finally we got some logical errors in gameplay as always. I am yet to find the game without them. In this case we got the fact that one horse is leaving tracks in mud, but 2 others do not. I guess we can have horse physics like in Red Dead Redemption in every game. Now time for some of the positive aspects, and some of them surprised me. For one, we got a useful hint system that actually helped me when I was stuck, unlike the one used in Uncharted 4 that I played not so long ago. Next one is surprisingly decent amount of different weapons for the story-focused single-player game. I was really happy about that. And speaking of deadly tools, Shiv is a multi-tool that has many different applications. I really like that. Okay, so in one segment of the game we got to play as Ellie for a little while. That's nice, and even nicer is the fact that she is represented realistically, meaning she can shoot or ride, but in melee combat she has virtually no chance against grown men. I like that approach, it raises the stakes and tension in an interesting way. Joel on the other hand is real brawler and can take almost anyone. And there is some variety in enemy type, not so much you mind, but still it is good enough. So that's about it when it comes to gameplay. It is very good, but not without its quirks and flaws. As I mentioned before, the game got tremendous amount of details in many places, and I am not only talking about graphics but animations and sound design as well. Let's talk about it step by step, shall we? Game looks good, in some places even very good, but in some other spots mediocre. It is slightly uneven but overall leaves a very good impression because of before mentioned detail. Sometimes it is crazy how much work went into some irrelevant on the first sight corner in Dirty Alley, but it all composes the whole picture. Some of seemingly unimportant pieces fit together making amazing whole. All of that comes at the cost however. Game has high hardware requirements. 8GB of VRAM is a little bit short in 1080p Ultra, so I had to lower it down to high with some custom alterations. This is next video game after Diablo 4 where maxing out settings even in 1080p is problematic, so folks, you better buy your graphic cards with as much VRAM as you can afford. I said it before, I'm saying it now, and I'm likely to say it again in the future. Still, even if the game is demanding in some aspects, it cannot use the maximum power of raw computing capabilities of modern GPU. It is just a case with some game engines, it's a nothing burger. Although funny thing is how titles ported from PlayStation have greater CPU usage than PC and Xbox ones. Next on the table we got animations, and they are great, even upgrading your weapons got them in high fidelity. Maybe many upgrades do not make logical sense when you look at them from the gunsmithing point of view, but from the perspective of layman it makes the process itself more enjoyable and supports the suspension of disbelief. Very impressive stuff. The only problem with animation that I can mention is that the flashlight works in impossible ways during takedown animations, but I can forgive this one minor transgression when I have all of the rest to enjoy. What I mean by the rest is sound and music, of course. It is all again so skillfully detailed that I am lost for words here. It does not do epic, oh no, not this time. In the case of Last of Us, we got what we need for this type of game. Sound effects crafted and used having the ambience in mind. The amount of work that went into that must have been monumental. On the other hand, the music is very minimalistic, often with lower amount of instruments that you would expect from the AAA production. Don't be fooled, however. If you listen to the soundtrack in isolation, you can hear the custom sounds of environments, creatures and even humans mixed in subtly into the hearts of many tracks. Someone had a great idea, call me double impressed. Last but not least, I have to mention the multitude of accessibility options, which is a well-known and loved standard for PlayStation games and their PC ports. Okay, so the base game took me around 12 hours to complete. To be honest, I would like it to be a little bit longer, but maybe it would stretch it thin, maybe it is for the best in the end, who knows. But during those hours I realized that this is the game which from one of my favorite memes originated.
That's the cutest fucking thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
There is, however, the bonus content with the name of Left Behind, which supposedly takes place 3 weeks before the start of the base game. Well, in part, cause other part of this expansion takes place during the timeline of the main game. I was not that much invested playing it, but I am glad it was in the part of the main game, cause it would be its most boring section. Maybe it is because I am not a lesbian teenager, but again, it invokes in me some warm feelings and memories when I was, believe it or not, a teenager myself, and I like those distant memories of me and my friends doing all sort of stuff in our free time. In moments like this, I wish they were all here. But since we grew up in a small town, naturally most of them scattered around the big world. Some of them didn't make it this far in life sadly, and a few walk the path we cannot follow, being more like those shroom zombies, animated objects that do not know their past. Oh man, I am getting really sentimental here, and in the dark way. Let's lighten up and make ourselves into better moods, shall we? Because, let me tell this, the Left Behind DLC is worth it to buy and play just for one reason, the Book of Puns. I listened to all of them, I had a great time. The whole expansion is only 2 hours long, so yeah, that's not much of a value, but I still recommend it for the completeness of the whole experience. One thing does bug me though. Hearing all these years how awesome The Last of Us Part 1 is, maybe made my expectation too high. Cause I can clearly see it is a great game, but I would not say by any means that it's one of my favorites of all times. For example, I liked Days Gone better. I know it is a controversial opinion and a hot take like youngsters say on the internet these days. I don't know, maybe when I play part 2 I will change my mind. I mean when it comes to the PC, cause despite all of the temptation, I do not see myself playing on the console anytime soon. Despite what I just said, I still think The Last of Us Part 1 is a piece of art and should be preserved for future generations of players. This is an easy recommendation from me. I can recommend it to any adult and mature player out there that wants to play through a very good written story with detailed and believable world sprinkled with good gameplay. I believe that's it for this episode. I am hopeful for the future even if it means living post-apocalypse. I think we will manage somehow whatever life throws at us. With that sentiment, I trust that I will see you next time in another Great Late Review.